turned it into something that they used for various reasons. During the deportation in 1942, they turned that into the Umschlagplatz because it was the closest place to the ghetto. Here started the ghetto. This is the Jerusalem Street, Rehov Jerozolimska. From here towards that church that you see from here, which is the Farna Church, a Roman Catholic church, that was the Jewish district that became the ghetto already in 1939. 1939, October 28, the first ghetto that the Germans established all over Europe was in this city. It became their model city for a ghetto. But it was not sealed. It was a ghetto where people could still move in and out. They exchanged the population. All Jews living outside the boundaries of the ghetto were forced to move in. All Gentiles that used to live in the ghetto were forced to move out. Only in 41 January, that ghetto became sealed with guards, and whoever a Jew marked, we didn't have the Star of David, we had here only this white with the David star on our arm. We was found outside, was executed on the spot. Those who took it off and were caught were even worse tortured. Now, when the ghetto was surrounded on October 14, 1942, they cordoned off block by block, and the people were brought in here, all the people with their belongings, and kept here for the whole day. And there was this selection, the first selection. There was an SS officer, Dr. Foye, a PhD, with two assistants, one Puzzallo and one Luckner. And they were in charge of this operation, and they were assisted by Ukraine and German SS units that harassed the people, shooting into the crowd, frightening them. And they marched them off towards the evening in columns down that street towards the cargo railway station. They were loaded onto that particular known train. 6,000 people were loaded. They had their registered number. The train was sealed and sent off to Treblinka. If people remained here, they were taken to the synagogue, locked in there like in a jail, and kept for the next train the day after. And the next train came. The first to be loaded were these people, and then they took the next block that they brought in out, and from this group they loaded another train. Now the people who were in labor, forced labor like myself, we were in shifts working outside, a few kilometers away from the city. We were brought into the emptied blocks where the people have been taken out, and we were to clear the homes from the furniture, from whatever was there. Valuable things have to be sorted out and packed. The Germans took very good care of it. It should be delivered to somewhere. And this place somewhere I will show you later. It used to be called Befehlsstelle of the SS. And the non-valuable things we were throwing out from the windows just into the street, and another group, another unit was collecting that garbage and carrying it away. This was the system. The first block that was cleared was the street down behind you, which is called the Staro-Warszawska Street, known the Jewish Street. This street was the first one to be cleared. It was fenced in with barbed wire, and when all the city was cleared out, they brought into that block those people like myself who worked in the factories outside, and we became the slave labor to work here for another year and living in this block, fenced in. From here we were going to our work, guarded by the Germans, 3 times a day, 3 shifts. But in the meantime, when the clearance was accomplished, so to say, and the city became Judenrein, on the railway station there was a huge sign. Piotrekow was called in German Piotrekow. They changed all the names, and was written in huge letters, Piotrekow ist Judenrein. Piotrekow became clean of Jews. It was a great celebration. Now,
when you walk through to go to your work, where did you walk through populated areas?
yes, we worked to the populated area, and I wouldn't like now to make any comments about that response or this rapport. Now here in the synagogue, the people who were there, usually women and children, because the men who were eligible for work in order to survive were not in the synagogue, only few of them. And there were very horrible scenes there. We were brought in to clear out these things, and there was opposite the synagogue a building, a small house. There was a family, Wollreich, and we cleared out that house. And there were a lot of garbage lying in the front of that house, whatever kitchen utensils you can imagine. And in the building of that, in the synagogue, a baby was born one night with a pregnant woman, and they heard outside the noise of a newborn, and they entertained themselves, 2 Ukrainians. It was cold, it was October like today, but it was very cold, and they put a bonfire to warm themselves. And they took a big bowl among the garbage heaps, and they put it on the fire, and that baby, they brought it out, baby. I myself was inside, but the others outside saw it, bringing it out by holding it on its feet and throwing it into the bowl. This was the scenes that we witnessed from the synagogue. Now the third transport, which was October, I believe 18, my mother and the younger brother and the smallest brother, 2 of them, was caught in hiding, and they were taken to that synagogue. And my father was still out, and he tried to rescue them. So they called them out, but they called only her name and not the name of her children. But she decided it was dark in the night to take both kids. One was 3 years older than me, and one was 11 years older than me. And the smaller one, who was 5 years old, she managed to hold him very tight to her under her coat. And the bigger one, who was just bar mitzvah a month earlier, was big enough. And at the entrance door, when she came out, when the police called her, they just cut off this older brother, pushed him back to the synagogue. And she was running back, they didn't let her, they pushed her out. So she came back to the ghetto and survived with the younger brother. He was taken to the last train, and at that train my father was taken from here, from the Umschlagplatz, because as the rabbi of the city, he didn't dare to hide, because he knew if he will hide, they will not see him, they will search through and others will be found. So he reported on this Umschlagplatz for every transport. And the last transport, this Dr. Foy came to him, he said, there too the Jews need a rabbiner, a rabbi, so you join them. And he went with them. And that was the day, yesterday, 48 years ago. So this is the end of the Jewish population here. This one street, which we will see in a moment, that was fenced in, was liquidated a year later in 43, and we were dispersed in all camps around. I ended up in Buchenwald with my younger brother, but others in different places. From the 28,000 people that were in town on the 13th of October 1942, I guess that about 400 survived, and that was in 45. How many of them are still alive, I don't know. This is, I would say, an example of a middle-sized Jewish city in Poland, and you can figure out what happened in Tomaszów was similar, or Radomsk, or Częstochow, or for the same reason Krakow. So what I would suggest, we should go into the synagogue. And I will tell you something personal here. The synagogue, most of these kind of synagogues have been burned down by the Germans. This was built in the 17th century. It was burned down and was about 50 years later rebuilt. but it's the same shape. It's a beautiful synagogue from the outside. The exterior has not been changed.
How old were you when you were here?
I was my bar mitzvah was 3 months before the war, and it was in the synagogue called the Rema synagogue in Krakow. There I was born. That was my bar mitzvah. But the synagogue was about to be burned down like all the others. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Germans offered, this wasn't the SS, it was the Wehrmacht, and they have an economic unit, they said they take the synagogue in order to accommodate Polish POWs. In a way, our people were pleased that will save the synagogue. So we were ordered, the Jewish boys at my age, older boys, to clear everything out. But before we came, they have already cleared all the furniture, everything thrown out. We found the Sifrei Torah, 26 pieces inside the ark that we managed to rescue. We put them up in some homes over there, but the majority of them we have the next day put into the car of the Chevra Kedisha. It was the burial society. It was driven by a horse, and instead of putting in a coffin with a body, we filled it with the scrolls, took it to the Jewish cemetery, and a day later we buried them between two tombs, ohalim, of rabbis that we will probably see. I haven't been there since then, I don't know. שומרים לבוקר. יחל ישראל אדוני, כי אם אדוני החסד והרבה עמו קדוש. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ילמד יברח חירותי, ימליך מלכותי, יצמח פורקני וקרא נשכי. חי יכול וביום יכול ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, חג עליו בזמן קריב יברו אמן, יהי שמי רבה וברך עליו, שמי עולמיה. יתברך, ישבח, ישראל, ויתרומן, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלוש, וימי דבושה בריבו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, נמירן ביומה במרור אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מלשמיה, חיים עלינו ועל ישראל, אמן. עושה שלום לדרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.